Should spectators be allowed at the Olympic Games? With only 1 month to go, this is still up in the air. Today, a panel of leading Japanese infectious disease experts called on the Games to be held without spectators. The panel's chairman telling reporters that's the least risky option.
With regards to the risk of the spread of coronavirus infections within the venues, we believe that it is desirable not to allow spectators, as this will reduce the risk of infection. Since holding the Olympics is already decided, I hope that it will be held in a way that the infection will not spread. That's my personal and expert view. In that sense, I believe that the organising committee and the government need to recognise that there are risks and take various countermeasures.
But the president of the Tokyo Organising Committee says she believes the Games can go ahead safely with sports fans in the stadiums. Here's our correspondent in Tokyo, Rupert Winfield-Hayes.
So I think the thing you have to understand about what's going on in Tokyo today is that it's really about what's going to happen here in Tokyo on Monday. Because on Monday there is going to be a meeting between the International Olympic Committee, the Tokyo Organising Committee and the Tokyo government and the Japanese national government. This is the big meeting that's going to make the final decision on whether the Olympics will go ahead with empty stadiums or with spectators in stadiums, and how many spectators in stadiums. So today what we've heard from is a panel of scientific experts, 26 of them, who have written and published this report today in which they have made the recommendation that if the Olympics is going to go ahead, they believe it should be done without spectators in stadiums, or at least they say that is the least risky option. And we heard from the lead author at the press conference today, a man called Shigeru Omi, who is actually one of the government's leading advisors during the whole of the COVID pandemic. And Mr. Omi has essentially today set himself up against the Japanese government in saying that this recommendation, he said, the Olympics is a sporting event unlike any other in the world. It's much bigger, it's much more complex, and it means that there will be mixing of many, many people in the venues. And the risk, he said, is that that will spread infections, cause a new wave of infection here in Japan, potentially, that would put enormous strain on the Japanese medical system. Now, I say that puts him at odds with the Japanese government because we have heard also today from the president of the Tokyo Organising Committee, Seiko Hashimoto. Mrs. Hashimoto said that she wants to go ahead with, as she put it, people celebrating the Olympics in stadiums. And she said that is the recommendation she is going to put forward to the meeting on Monday. Now, what decision they will make on Monday, whether they will take the advice of the scientists or whether they will take Mrs. Hashimoto's advice, we don't know. But it does look as though the Japanese government does want to have some sort of spectators in stadiums. And it could be that we will see a situation where they follow the recommendations they have for other sporting events at the moment, and that means up to 10,000 spectators in stadiums or 50% of the capacity of that stadium. And in the case of the Tokyo Olympic Stadium, the main stadium, that could mean up to 35,000 people being inside the main stadium. They say they can do that safely. They believe the measures they're putting in place have already shown that this can work at other sporting events in Japan. But as we've seen today, the scientific opinion is that that is a hugely risky thing to do.
I've also been speaking to Professor Eric Brunner, epidemiologist at University College London, immediately after he chaired a meeting about Japan's COVID-19 response. He was talking about how differently the pandemic is being approached there compared to the UK.
It's fascinating. They have a much better epidemic than us. They've only had about 14,000 deaths compared to 129,000 in this country. And it's clear that there is a much lower threshold there for bringing in the more strict controls. And in fact, they've had two emergencies, national emergencies. They're worried that the Delta variant is much more transmissible. And so they are advocating to the Olympic Committee that there should be no crowds at the Olympic venues. And I put to them that in the UK and in European countries, the Euros are going ahead. Stadiums are allowed to be, in our case, 25% full, with social distancing and so forth. And it's clear that the attitude in Japan is very much a precautionary one. What will prevail in the end, and the decision looks like it's going to be made on Monday, is not predictable, but it's likely that they will allow some people into the stadiums.
Are the clinicians that you're speaking to, Professor, saying we don't think there should be spectators at all? Or do you think if spectators could prove they'd been vaccinated, that might make a difference?
They're advocating zero audience. That obviously the possibility is that they could ask for a negative test or an evidence of vaccination. But there seems to be really an anxiety about what the Olympic events will bring to Japan.